Hey everyone, Nate with GrowersHouse here, and I'm pretty excited that we just got our hands on the new Hortilux double-ended 1000-watt HPS lamp. So we met up with Hortilux, Mike over there, and we got our hands on the fourth Hortilux DE bulb that made its way off the assembly line. And here it is. So this has been long anticipated, and Hortilux has spent a lot of time refining this bulb, and they actually had to put in some of their own unique patented technology into this bulb that make it different than any other DE bulb on the market. Aside from the fact that it's the only bulb, DE 1000-watt HPS, that's actually made in the USA. All the other ones are made either in Europe or Asia. So this one's here is made in the US, and I wanted to go over some of the features that make it unique and tell you a little bit about the bulb and what makes this DE bulb different than others and what makes DE bulbs different than single-ended bulbs. So why don't we start with the pins? So if you've ever had a double-ended bulb, you may have noticed that the pin right here is actually made of this metal that often gets frayed. And what Hortilux has done to solve that issue is to actually do a tiny, it's almost like a weld they've done that keeps it all together, and it's actually much sturdier too. Most of them bend very easily. This is actually very sturdy, which keeps it locked into your fixture a lot more snugly than most of the other bulbs on the market. I actually don't know of any other bulb that has, essentially a piece that's as sturdy as this one. Now, moving inside of the bulb, you'll notice that there's essentially a piece of metal that coils as it reaches the arc tube. Now this is a very unique piece, and they built this on each side so that this arc tube, as it heats up, it will actually expand, and then when it cools down, it'll contract. And if you don't allow for that expansion and contraction, essentially it's going to make it so that your bulb doesn't last as long, because these metal pieces, they don't respond well to expanding and contracting. So this round, almost spring-looking area is actually allowing that arc tube to expand and contract, which it essentially keeps the life of the bulb longer than a bulb where it wouldn't allow that. And it also keeps the arc tube centered within the bulb so that it doesn't shift either one way or the other, changing the lighting dynamics of the reflector that you have this within. That part is really, really important, and it's something that's been really tough for these double-ended bulbs, and a problem for them, because this arc tube, although it looks just like a single-ended HPS arc tube, it actually heats up to, well, it has about 3 times the amount of pressure than a single-ended bulb does, which is a lot more, and that is why double-ended bulbs are putting out more light than single-ended bulbs. It's simply more pressure in the arc tube. There's nothing special, there's no secret sauce. It's just that higher amount of pressure that can go through here creates more photons. More photons to your plant equals more photosynthesis, better growth rates. So another unique thing that I wanted to point out in this bulb that is more for you lighting nerds out there, if you take a really close look at this arc tube, there's a silver circle that runs on both sides of the lamp, and you will not see this in most double-ended lamps, but in some. And there's actually a little silver line that runs down the arc tube. Now this is a printed starting aid that Hortilux put in, and this printed starting aid is embedded into the arc tube, the PCA, which is known as polycrystalline alumina. But that essentially that white slender arc tube that you see inside of it. So this helps span the gap as the bulb ignites from one electrode to the next, which makes it so that the bulb can ignite a lot cleaner and a lot more quickly. And this should have a positive effect on the longevity of the bulb. So in designing this bulb, Hortilux was really looking for making it so that it'll last a long time, perform to its maximum growth potential for as long as possible. And speaking to that growth potential, they recommend using this bulb for about 10 to 11 months if you're really focusing on the optimal yield out of your plants. Now, if you're using this more for, maintenance growth, something in a garden where it's supplemental lighting, it's more like 13 to 14 months before you want to switch it out. So, getting back to the arc tube and how much pressure is in it, as I like to say, more pressure, more problems. So, the problems are mainly due to acoustic resonance. And the acoustic resonance is actually coming from the ballast. So if you get a ballast that is operating on the wrong frequency, then you're going to have issues with this bulb. So you need a high frequency digital 1000-watt ballast that operates over 100,000 hertz. And if you don't, then you're going to have issues with the arc tube, the plasma inside the arc tube hitting against the side and breaking. So make sure you do not run this on your traditional 1000-watt ballast if it was not made for double-ended bulbs. And one last thing that all these double-ended bulbs have is nitrogen gas filled within this glass tube. Now, single-ended bulbs only have, they actually have no atmosphere inside of the bulb. It's a total vacuum. But the reason they put nitrogen gas inside of these double-ended bulbs is because there's so much pressure, they generate so much heat that heat needs to be dissipated off somehow. And if it stays near the bulb, literally it will just melt the components of the bulb. So the nitrogen gas actually allows the heat to conduct itself out of the bulb, but the problem is it goes into your environment, so you have to cool it. So if people ever say, the double-ended bulbs seem a little bit warmer than my 1000-watt single-ended bulbs, they're probably correct. There is more heat coming off of these bulbs, more radiant heat. So that is no lie, but the extra performance you get out of these double-ended bulbs usually more than compensates for that slight increase in heat. So as far as the performance specs goes, Hortilux says this is a 1950 U-mol bulb at 1000 watts, 2100 U-mols at 1150 watts, and there are some bulbs that have claimed to be 2100 U-mols at 1000 watts. We're going to run our own test and see if that's the case when we do our 1000-watt double-ended comparison. But other than that, I really wanted to show off this bulb because I think this is probably one of the most technologically advanced DE bulbs out on the market, and it's now available for sale. Please, if you have any questions, either email us at staff@growershouse.com or give us a call. We're open 7 days a week. Take care. Happy growing.